Right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. نوى التعلم والتعليم والذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني من الشرف يا هني وهب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني ومن شرب الصوف يا هني وهب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني ومن شرب الصوف يا هني وهب يا غني. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله. Alhamdulillah. Sorry for coming late. I was actually on at Clementi side. Then I had to wait for my husband to come home with because he took my phone. So I had to wait for my phone to come home with my husband because otherwise I wouldn't be able to record with my phone. So I had to wait, and then by then was Maghrib, so I prayed Maghrib. I think by the time I reached here from Clementi, it was already very late. Right, so what? Okay, alhamdulillah, circumstances. Alhamdulillah. Okay, alhamdulillah. So last week, right, we actually took the Islam of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, right, Sayyidina Muhammad, right, and actually in fact someone mentioned to me that we have taken the hijrah to Habsha. We went through the hijrah to Habsha. One of the listeners online, they told me that we did do it. I actually now it does ring a bell. I think we did do it. Do you remember doing it? At all? Have you been following the online? Yeah. Yeah, but I think Sayyidina Ja'far, right, and the hijrah to Habsha. Yeah, we did do it. Actually, we did do it. Right. So okay, so we're not because I was wondering how come I thought I skipped it, but it was strange because it should be the hijrah to Habsha and then the Islam of Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Hamza. Right, you don't, it's not the other way around. And because what actually happened was that with the Islam of Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Hamza, radiallahu anhuma, the people in Habsha, they actually heard the news. And at the same time, there was the recitation of Surah Najm, right, around the Kaaba. And with the recitation of Surah Najm, right, what happened in that period of time is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went and he went to the Kaaba area and he recited Surah Najm. And so what happened was that Surah Najm at the end of it, right, there is an ayat of sajda, you sujood. Right, so what happened was that everybody who was around the Kaaba with the recitation of Surah Najm, all of them fell down in prostration. Right, all disbelievers and believers, every human being who was around the Kaaba at that time fell down in prostration. Right, it was their ruh. Right, so the ulama said it was their ruh that made them prostrate. Right, they couldn't even stand, they couldn't even control themselves. Right, everybody went down in prostration. Right, but when they came to, like in a sense, when they realized what just happened, right, then they called Rasulullah a magician. Right, they just said that he cast magic on all of them. But it was actually it was their soul that recognized the surah that was sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, Surah Najm, right, and the souls were the ones that went into prostrations, right, forcing the physical bodies to go into prostration. Right, it's recorded. If you look at the tafsir of Surah Najm, you will find, right, this event actually took place in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what happened was that this story actually reached the people of Habsha, the Sahaba who actually migrated to Abyssinia. Right, so there was a group of them who migrated because they were persecuted, right, and they were so they fled. Basically, they fled Mecca, right, and they went to Habsha because Rasulullah said, "Go to Habsha, for surely it has a king, right, that is fair. Right, there's a fair king of Habsha. So go to Habsha." Right, so they went to Habsha, and true enough, right, the king was a very fair king. So even though the disbelievers came to try and get them back into the story, right, and they spoke up and they said their part, right, and the king allowed them to stay on. Right, because the king was someone who would hear both sides, and from there is a lesson for us about hearing both sides. Right, so quickly are we, right, to hear one side and make a judgment, right, and then brush off the other side, right, and that is actually not correct for us to do. Right, to just hear one side and then make a conclusion about the other side that has been spoken about. And so many times, subhanAllah, in our society and even around us and even ourselves, right, so many times you hear one side of the story, right, and we are so quick to make a judgment without ever listening to the other side, right, without ever listening to the other side, right. It is actually very wrong, right. It is very wrong for us to actually do that, right, and it can fall into a haram, right. It is haram, right, when you begin to make bad opinions, false opinions of somebody on the other side just because you heard the stories of one side, right, and not both sides, right. So what happened was that the story reached them. Sayyidina Umar came into Islam, Sayyidina Hamza came into Islam, all the people around the Kaaba prostrated, right, at the recitation of Surah Najm. So the news that reached the people who had migrated to Habsha was that everybody in Mecca had become Muslim. Right, so the news was twisted, in a way. It was false news lah. It wasn't true news. It was false news that reached them. Right, so there was a number of them that actually left Habsha, right, and they went back to Mecca. Right, thinking, because of course they don't want to be separated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They don't want to. Right, but they fled because of persecution. Right, so the moment they realized, oh wait, everybody has become Muslim. Right, also Hamza is Muslim right now, Umar bin Khattab is Muslim, and there was this entire sajda going around the Kaaba that happened. Right, so it was a misunderstanding, right, that people in Mecca had become Muslim and they came back. Right, some, not all of them, some of them came back, only to find out news was false, and that the persecution against the Muslim was getting more and more intense. Right, the persecution, right, more and more intense, and there were a number of them who stayed on, and there were a number of them who actually went back to Habsha. Right, so that is recorded. Right, so right, so at this point, right, so at this point we Muhammad. Okay, so we finished the Habsha, right? So and we finished Sayyidina Umar's story of how he entered into Islam, right? Okay, and then so now we mentioned before, I didn't write it out today because I think I'm just I feel myself under the weather. Yeah, so was Zainab Muhammad, right? So what happened was that now, if you remember in the first lesson that we have at the point of revelation coming to Rasulullah, that we see the disbelievers move from one method to another method in trying to stop the message. And you see human beings, how they try to stop a message. Right? So first, initially, it was trying to ignore it, just ignore it. Right? And then second, it was trying to deter others from listening to Rasulullah by calling him all kinds of names. Right? And they will continue with all these methods, not that they will stop, but they will try more and more methods as they see their methods are not working. Right? So they'll try, say all kinds of things to deter people from listening to Rasulullah. Right? So, and it happens throughout human history, right? When people find, someone getting more popular, or somebody speaking the truth, or somebody, whatsoever, right? The envious, right, or the enemies, they take similar lengths, right, to stop, right, what they hate, right? So first, they might ignore it, hoping that it just goes away, right? And then they begin to call names, and they begin to make accusations that are false, right? And then they begin to start with the harm, right? They begin to get aggressive, which is where we are right now, right? Right now we're at the phase whereby it was aggression, right? And when they saw that this aggression, right, was not going anywhere, right, because the Muslims had migrated, right, and it's one, it's not, and they cannot be aggressive onto Rasulullah because he is under a very powerful tribe, right? He's tribe of Bani Hashim, right? So what they decided, right, was that, right, they would compromise, right, come to a compromise, right? So you see, it's human behavior, right? They will come to a compromise with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So there are several narrations as to what happened with this compromise. The first narration, right, is by Utbah bin Rabi'ah, right? So Utbah bin Rabi'ah, right, he is known, right, to be somebody who is known. He knew, he was of the most informed and intellectual of the people of the disbelievers, of the Quraysh. So he knew about poetry, and he knew about soothsaying, and he knew about black magic, and he was basically very well versed, how you would call him, very, very well versed in all these sciences, right? So he said Right, so he once he saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and these brothers were all together, and they saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sitting by himself in the at the Kaaba area. So he said, oh my people, I'm going to stand and go to Muhammad, and I'm going to speak to him. Right, let's do this like adults. Let's do this properly. We don't just go around beating up people. Right, we don't go around, just torturing people. Right, we just let's do this, like mature individuals. We're all adults. Let me go there, right, and let me just present to him, right, some maybe just some offers that I can offer him, right, and maybe he might accept one of the offers, right, and then we are done with him and his preaching. Right, so he said, I'm just going to go. So he said, Ya ma'ashar al-Quraysh, ala aqumu ila Muhammadin fa'ukallimuhu وعارض عليه أمورا لعله يقبل بعضها. Right, so he says, and I will just show him, I will just present to him some, deals that we can take. Right, and then so he went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and he said, right, so he went to Rasulullah and he said, and he began very gently and softly. He's Utbah bin Rabi'ah. He's known for his eloquency. Right, so they are like, of the disbelievers who are not harsh, right, and who are not, like terrible like Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl is one kind. Right, he's of a different species altogether. Yeah? He's one kind. Right, but you have those, of the disbelievers, right, who are, they don't like what's happening, right, but at the same time they're civilized. You will call them civilized, right? So he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, "Oh my nephew, right, ya ibn akhi, oh my cousin, right, oh my cousin." And they're all cousins, like, it's not that they're direct cousins, they're all under the same tribe. Right. Innaka minna haythu qad alimta min sittah. Right, fi ashira. Right, so he says that for sure you have a space, you have a place with us, right, in our tribe. You have a place in our tribe. And you have somebody, you are someone of noble descendancy and noble lineage. And so he began, speaking to Rasulullah because he's about to compromise. Right? So he's about to, try to win over the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? And he says that, for surely you are somebody who has station with us. Right? And you were beloved to us. Right? And we, everybody in Makkah before this, before what is happening right now, right, all of us used to look up to you and love you and exalt you. Right? And then you came to us with this. Right, with this message, that, against our, you qad ataita qawmaka bi amrin azim. Right, you came to us with a great word, with a great affair. Right, and now and now you are breaking apart our society. Right, the way he speaks, right, you're breaking apart our society. Right, and you are making, those who used to be intellectual amongst us foolish. From their point of view lah. Right? So for them, like say, no, Abu Bakr was somebody who was very intellectual and somebody who was very, looked up to in society. And to them, you made Abu Bakr foolish, right? And say, no, Uthman, right, somebody of high standing, and now you made him foolish, right? So they say, you have fooled, right? You have fooled the intellectuals amongst us, right? So of course, is their point of view, right? Of course, their point of view, right? And then he said that, and you have insulted our gods, right? And you have, and you have denied what our fathers have taught us, right, about the worship of idols. So then he said, so listen to me, right? And I want to just, inform you of a few things. I want to just to come to some sort of compromise with you, right, on a few things. So Rasulullah at this point, he said, yes, oh father of Walid, I am listening. Right, so here you see Rasulullah, he's not cutting off Utbah bin Rabi'ah, right, because he came gently, right, trying to compromise. And Rasulullah said, okay, let's hear what you have to say. Right, and that is one of the lessons that we learn. Right, when people who are not on the same page as you, right, come to speak to you with compromise, right, with gentleness, what do? You listen. You listen, you hear what they have to say, even if they're the words of enemies. Right? You listen to what they have to say. Then from there, you decide, if you're going to take what they are going to say, or you're going to reject it. Right? So basically, So this is from the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, never to cut off. Right? If there is a compromise, it's going to come your way, hear it. Doesn't mean you have to take it. Right? But you have to hear it out first. Hear it out, be fair, right, about what they are trying to do. So he said, okay, قال يا أبا الوليد أسمع. Right, so I will hear, let me hear. Right, and then he says, right, oh my cousin, right, if it is, if you want, if what you want of this affair, right, is wealth, right, then we will come together and we'll give you the most wealth that you can dream of. Right, all of us will work together to give you the wealth and pay you off whatever wealth that you want. Right, if what you want of this matter, right, is following, you want like people to make you the king, and you want to be a king and leader, right, then we will make you our king and make you our leader. Right, and he says that if what you want from this affair, right, is and if you find that maybe you are being possessed, right, and you want to be cured from your possession, then we will bring you the best of doctors, right, to cure you. You see, like it's a very sincere approach, right, as to how he's trying to see, because basically they can't see. Maybe Utbah bin Rabi', he has never, probably before this, he has never heard the Quran. Because at this point, he will hear the Quran and you will see him change immediately. Right? His entire approach has changed. Right? So now it's probably before him ever hearing the Quran. Right? And he says, and so he went on and on with a few proposals to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? And eventually Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, are you done, O Aba Walid? Right? Have you done saying what you want to say? Right? And that's also of the politeness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So not straight away, you shut him off and nonsense lah. What do you think I am? I can be bored easily. That kind of thing, nothing. Right? Because he could see that Utbah bin Rabi'ah, right? He was coming sincerely trying to reconcile, right? Trying to figure this out. Right? But at the same time, he couldn't see, right, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was indeed a prophet, right? And the prophet, when it comes to their work, right, in da'wah, in spreading about Islam, there is no compromise. Right? There is no compromise, that they will spread the truth. The truth is not to be compromised, and that is the nature of truth. Truth cannot be compromised. Truth cannot be. You can't water down truth. Truth is truth, right? So he might. Other things he might compromise, but truth is truth. Right? So for us, we know, 5 times a day prayer, 5 times a day prayer. There is no compromise with that. Fasting in Ramadan, no compromise in that. Right? There are things in our religion whereby there is absolutely no compromise. We don't compromise these things. Right? And then there are things whereby, you might want to compromise, maybe. Right? Allahu Alam. Right? Depending on society. Right? So he says, are you done, O Abu Walid? And and Utbah bin Rabi'ah, he said, yes, I'm done. I'm done saying what I have to say. Then he said, now you listen to me. Right? Hear me out. Right? And then he began to recite the first few verses of Surah Fussilat. Right? The first few verses of Surah Fussilat. So he began, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Hamim. Right? Hamim. Right? Of the letters that some surahs begin with. Hamim. Tanzilum minal Rahmanir Rahim. Right? It is a revelation, right, from the most gracious, the most merciful. Kitabun fussilat ayatuhu Qur'anan Arabiyyan liqawmin ya'lamun. Right? A book, right, that has clarified and distinguished. A clarifying book. Right? Its verses are clarifying. It is a Quran that's Arabic for a people who know. لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ بَشِيرًا وَنَذِيرًا فَأَعْرَضَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ. Right? It is a giver of good news, and it's a warner, right? But it is a warner, right? But most of them, they turn away, and most of them, they do not hear. Right? They turn away and they refuse to hear this Quran. وقالوا قلوبنا في أكنة مما تدعونا إليه. Right? And they say, our hearts, right, there are locks, there are shackles over our hearts, there's locks over our hearts, it's covered up. Our hearts are covered up from what you have called us to. Right? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he recited the first few verses of Surah Fussilat. Right? And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, after reciting what he has recited, right, Abu Walid, right, this Utbah bin Rabi'ah, his face changed, right, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he continued to recite, right, until he reached the verses of sujud, and then he went to sujud, right, in front of Utbah bin Rabi', and then he came back and then he said to Utbah, right, for surely you have heard what you have heard, right, and for you that's my answer. Basically, that's my answer. You have heard what you have heard, and that's my answer. Right, so which means what? What was the answer Rasulullah gave? Right, basically, he did not address anything that Utbah said, right, because all he saw was that Utbah did not see that he is indeed a prophet bringing revelation. Right, for you to be able to propose this kind of compromise, that means you really don't understand he's actually a prophet. Right, you don't get it that he is indeed a prophet. Right, so that's why he recited the Quran onto him to let him know that what I am bringing is not me. It's not even my choice. I don't have a choice of stopping. I can't even stop. Right, because now it's wajib on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's compulsory on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to bring this message to the people. Right, so Utbah bin Rabi'ah, right, he was stunned, right, by what happened. He was shocked by what happened. Right, and he walked his way back to the disbelievers. And disbelievers, when they saw his face, they saw that his face had changed. Right, he was a different face from the face that he went with, right, because he went with intent. Right, he was intent on trying to come to a compromise with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he came back stunned. Right, so the disbelievers were like, there's something, probably Muhammad cast his spell on Utbah. Right, he's also being cast, there's a spell on him. Right, so they begin to blame him and say, oh, Abu Walid, right, did Muhammad cast a spell on you? What's wrong with you? What happened between you and Muhammad? And then he came to the people and he said that I heard something. Right? He said, I heard something, Wallahi, he swears by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I heard something that is nothing like I've heard before. Ever. I've never heard these words before in my life. Right? And then he said, Wallahi ma huwa bish-shi'r wala bis-sihr. Right? It is not poetry and it's not black magic. It's not magic, it's not poetry. Wala bikahana. And it's not soothsaying. It's not any of what you've been accusing him of. It is not. Right? And then he says, oh my people, listen to me as to what I'm about to say to you. It is Utbah saying. And he's not Muslim, he doesn't become Muslim. He remains a disbeliever. He actually remains a disbeliever. He does not enter into Islam. But he said to his people, obey me in what I'm about to say. Right? And take me by this. And he said, leave this man on his way. That means don't get in his way. Right? This man Muhammad, leave him. Right? Leave him on his way. If he's successful, then for you is success. But if he is a fraud, then the people out there, the other Arabs, they will come and they will take him down. Right? So don't get in his way. Right? Because there's something in there, in this speech that he's bringing, that it is not anything that I've ever heard before. And of course, the disbelievers, they were like, you have been, under his magic, under his spell, under his whatsoever, and they begin to do all of these things. And he was like, say whatever you want. I heard what I heard. And he is the most educated and the most well versed of all of these believers. He knows, right, his stuff, like he knows the Arabic poetry. So he knows the Quran is like nothing ever. Right, so Muhammad. Right, so that is the part. Right, so the disbelievers, they after that the incident. Right, so Utbah basically he washed his hands off. Right, he's not getting involved already. Right, but of course later on he does go for the Battle of Badr. Right, and he will be killed in the Battle of Badr. He's one of those who were killed. Right, as disbelievers. Right, so and that is because of his he has an interesting story, this Utbah bin Rabi'ah. His story is that he was actually against the battle. He didn't want to go and fight. Right, so there were disbelievers who were not very keen on going for the Battle of Badr. They were not. Right, very few of them, in fact, wanted to go and fight. Right, but what happened was this Abu Jahl. Like Abu Jahl is one, Fir'aun going around, right? So Abu Jahl, he would instigate. He would instigate and he would make fun and he would mock and he would make it like, like, oh, you're backing out of the battle, you chicken, like, you're not a man. Right? You're like, stay behind with the woman lah. Stay with the woman and stay with the children. Right? So basically this Abu Jahl, he has like a function that he does. Right? So he goes around making everybody feel, right, that they need to prove their manhood, right, by going to battle. Right? So it's basically Abu Jahl, his words that's spurring people on, even though their better judgment tells them it's not a good idea. Right? So their better judgment says, it's not a good idea. This battle, we're fighting our own people. They're all Quraysh. Right? Basically, the Muslims in Medina are from Mecca originally, so they're our cousins, our nephews, our people lah. So what kind of people fight their own people to them? It was something that was unbecoming to fight your own people. Right? It's always between tribe warfare, but there was never within a tribe warfare. Right? But the Battle of Badr was one of the first within tribe warfare. Right? But because Abu Jahl, right, he kept poking at them, he kept making fun of them. Right? When they refused to go for battle, then all of them, let's go. Right? And to show to Abu Jahl, they are not chickening out lah. They're not being cowards. Right, by getting out of the battle. But of course Abu Jahl had ignorance that was very painful, right, to actually speak about. Right, but the other disbelievers, there were those who were very sound-minded, right, but then again their pride got the better of them. Right, their pride made them go out and fight. So Utbah bin Rabi' was one of those who was killed, right, on the Battle of Badr, right, and he only went out because Abu Jahl kept chiding him about it. He kept making fun of Utbah bin Rabi' about not wanting to go out. Alright. So from that story, right, what happened, what the Quraysh gathered was that Rasulullah SAW did not answer the question. Right, he did not. Right. So they said, okay, you know what, we're gonna go again. Right, we're gonna go again, and this time we're gonna go through Abu Talib. Right, Abu Talib, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, and this was something that was Sayyidina Muhammad. Right, this was something that was difficult. Right, that was difficult on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so when they went to Abu Talib, right, they said to Abu Talib, tell your nephew, you work with us, right, to try to stop your nephew from spreading this message. Right, and Abu Talib, ever since reluctant and whatever, but because of the pressure of society, right, he gave in and said, I will speak to my nephew. Right, but they know they cannot touch Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because Abu Talib was alive and they all respected Abu Talib. So they never touch Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so eventually Abu Talib would go to Rasulullah and same thing, he would present all of these things. The people have been speaking to me about this, and and they're pressuring me. Right, will you not stop? Right, will you not stop if you're calling to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. So Abu Talib, he began to present to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, what the disbelievers were presenting, and at the same time he inserted some of his his own words. I'm growing old, I'm your uncle, right, and the people, they are being hard on me and so on. Right, so he would do that. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, he said to his uncle, say, oh my uncle, right, even if they place the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, I will not leave this matter until it is accomplished, or Allah or I am destroyed in doing so. And let me see, I am never ever going to leave this matter. Right? And then he turned away from his uncle, and he felt as if his uncle is now going to leave him. Right? His uncle has now abandoned him, right, in his mission. Right? And he felt the sadness, that his uncle is now on the side of the disbelievers. Right? Of course, Abu Talib, he sensed what was going on in Rasulullah, in the sadness that he felt that his uncle is now leaving him. Right? Then Abu Talib, he pulled his nephew back and he said, oh Muhammad, say what you want to say. Right? Say what you want to say. Right? For surely I will be in your defense and I will be supporting you, right, until my last breath. Right, so he pledged his support to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the scholars, traditionally, the Hadrami scholars especially, they don't say anything about Abu Talib. right? There are those that say that Abu Talib passed away as a disbeliever, right? But the scholars, the Hadrami scholars specifically, they don't say anything. They say, how will you know? I mean, you wouldn't know, right? His very last moment of, of life, did he or did he not? Right? So Allahu Alam, right? Allahu Alam, right? So they don't comment. They don't comment on the state of Abu Talib because he was somebody who was very beloved to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he was someone who supported the cause the entire way. He never once turned back on Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right? So Allahu Alam, right? The answer, if anyone was to ask you, is Abu Talib believer or disbeliever? You say Allahu Alam. It's not our business. Right? It's none of our business to actually know is he a believer or not believer. Right? As if we are all guaranteed our place in paradise and we know we're gonna die as believers. As if. Right? And for us to say who died as a believer or disbeliever, you don't even say for yourself. Why you going to talk about other people for what? Right? And this scholars in Hadramaut and also other parts of the world, they do say about people who comment about the parents of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? Saying that the parents of Rasulullah are in the hellfire, right? And they say that we don't speak about that, right? Because what benefit do you gain, right, by saying that Sayyidina Amina and Sayyidina Abdullah, right, they're in the hellfire? What do you gain? What do you gain by saying these kind of words? Right? You're not going to gain anything. It's not going to be a reward onto you, right? So kif, they say stop it, right? Stop talking about these things. It's none of your business, right? Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala can do whatever He wants to do, right? And there are narrations, right, about Rasulullah going to see his parents at their graves and whatsoever. Allahu Alam. Like, we don't comment on things that are none of our business. It's not as if you're on some throne in paradise and saying who's in hell and who is in heaven. We are not. Right? So we don't comment on who is hell and who is in heaven, right, at all. Right? So even like you want to say about our prime minister or president or whosoever, we can't say anything at all. Right? We are not. It's Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala who judges who is in hell and who is in heaven. Right? All we know is that it's in the hands of Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. Right. Now.
Before this, I've always known the story of when Abu Talib passed away, and then his last breath, Prophet Muhammad was very sad the year that he passed away. And then there was this, I don't know whether the hadith is valid or not, that Prophet Muhammad actually asked him to be pardoned by Allah, but Allah could then pardon him, and then every Friday the water coming out from his fingers.
That one is a mix. Abu Lahab, every Monday water came out of his fingers. That's Abu Lahab, right? Because he freed his slave when Rasulullah was born. Because so he is in the hellfire. Abu Lahab is in the hellfire. They don't confirm because that one is in the Quran, right? But every Monday he gets, that's in Sahih Bukhari. Every Monday he gets relief, right? And he gets water from his fingers, right? But Abu Talib, there's no, people, they refrain from commenting. So I also won't comment, right, on his state lah. On his state. Allahu Alam. Of course we hear people say all kinds of things, kan. But then we think about it also, like, why are we saying all these things? Right? Why are they as if you know, right, the state of his heart when he passed away, right? Allahu Alam, So at this point, we're going through the strategies of how they are trying to stop the Muslims from spreading, and from Islam from spreading. Right? So at this point, compromise doesn't seem to work. Right? It's not working. Because Rasulullah has said, put the sign in my left hand, the movement in my left hand, and I will not stop this matter. And now Abu Talib is even more fervent, right, on his supporting of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So now, in fact, the opposite has happened. So these believers, they were trying to get Abu Talib, right, to speak to Rasulullah for them, right, on their side. And what happened eventually? Abu Talib eventually, instead of convincing Rasulullah to come to a compromise, he is now firmly a supporter, right, of this mission, and he will never leave the side of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So now this new dynamics, right, this new progression in this situation, right, it now leads to the next thing. The next step, right, and that is the boycott, right? And the boycott, inshallah, we'll go into detail with the boycott, right? Because the boycott will be 3.5 years of real hardship on the family of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was perhaps the worst thing that disbelievers were to do to the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right. So the boycott, right, is called, so what happened was that, so now the disbelievers, they feel that they're pushed to their limits. Right, punishment didn't work, right, persecution didn't work, compromise did not work. So what are they going to do? Boycott. Right, so what is the boycott about? So Abu Jahl, right, he wrote on a piece of paper. It's Abu Jahl. It's all Abu Jahl story lah. It's all him. Of course, there were the disbelievers who were there, right? But he was the main mastermind who was behind all the terrible deeds lah. The terrible deeds, all you will trace it back to Abu Jahl. Right? He's that one person, right, who will be so stubborn, right, as to not allow Rasulullah SAW to just do what he wants to do. It's like Utbah bin Rabi'ah. He said, just let him be. Let him be. Right? If he is right, then for you is honor. If he is wrong, the people around Makkah will take him down. Right? So don't get in his way. So there are these believers who are like, they're on the stand that if you don't want to believe, don't believe. Right? But don't be so aggressive about it. Right? Let him be. Right? But Abu Jahl is not someone who does that. Right? He's going to be aggressive. Right? He's going to be terrible to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he wrote on a piece of paper, Bismillahumma, by the name of by your name, O Allah. Right? And he wrote down the conditions of the boycott. Right? So he writes, right, that this boycott, right, this Muhammad, right, this boycott is to happen, right, between the Quraysh and the entire of Bani Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib. Right? So right, so the entire family of Bani Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib. Right, so the Bani Hashim will be, Hashim, the great-grandfather of Rasulullah, and al-Muttalib is his brother. Right, so basically, Rasulullah's tribe and the cousins. Right, so basically, under al-Muttalib and under Hashim, they are both together. They are basically together lah. Right, because when Abu Talib, right, pledged his unwavering support of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the rest of the tribe of Bani Hashim, as well as Bani Muttalib, they all joined in with Abu Talib. Right? So basically, even though they were not Muslim, and they were not Muslim, right? There were those who were Muslim, and there were those who were not Muslim, right? They came and they joined in, right? Because for them, it's like their leader. So when your leader does something out of your own awe and your own honor for your leader, who is old at that time, Abu Talib was old, right? Out of honor for him, right? They would join with the support. Right, so Abu Talib, he pledged his support to Rasulullah after the last time they tried to compromise, right? And all of the tribe of Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, they all joined in. So now these believers say, okay, you know what? We're going to strangle them. We're going to push them to a corner, right? So they wrote, right, that nobody is to have any form of transaction, right, with the tribe of Bani Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib. Right? That means no buying, no selling, no marriage, nothing. Right? Basically, they were cut off. You don't even speak to them. You don't interact with them. Nothing. Right? So the entire of Quraysh was to cut off the entire tribe of Bani Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib. Why? Until they surrender Muhammad to us for us to kill. Right? So they basically they're cornering the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And before this, I'm not sure if I mentioned this story before, right? But in fact, these believers, they came up to Abu Talib, and this was one of the most ridiculous compromise you've ever heard these believers give to Abu Talib. Right? They came up to Abu Talib and they said, "Yeah, Abu Talib, hear us out. Right? You have pledged your undenying support of your nephew Muhammad. Right? And they said, how about we bring you the best young man that we have, right? The best young man that we have, right? And we do a one-on-one exchange. Okay, so you take our best young man, right? So you have your own nephew, right, in this best young man, and then we take Muhammad." And then Abu Talib, he was like, seriously, are these people even thinking, right? So Abu Talib, he turns to them, he didn't even think. He didn't even consider anything else. Like, he turns to them and he says that, do you expect me to give you my nephew for you to kill? and for you to give me your child for me to bring up, like, are you even thinking? Like, what kind of exchange is that? You're going to kill my nephew and you expect me to bring up your nephew. And so Abu Talib was like, what kind of offer was that? It was the most ridiculous offer he's ever heard. Right? It's not a one-on-one exchange. Like, you're going to kill my nephew and you expect me to feed your nephew. Right? So, subhanAllah. I mean, and that's actually one of the stories that they relate. And Abu Talib pushed them away. He rejected them. Right? So basically, Sayyidina Muhammad, the boycott, right, happened, right? And here, right, so they wrote that the family of Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, except Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab, basically, he washed his hands off of his own tribe. So he abandoned them. Right? So Abu Lahab declared, I am not of Bani Hashim. I am not in support of Muhammad. Right? So the boycott was not on Abu Lahab. Because Abu Lahab, technically, he is of the family of Bani Hashim. Right? So the entire family of Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, right, they were under this boycott, whereby there was not going to be any form of transaction between them and anybody within Mecca. Right? So because of that, no buying, no selling, no marriage, no nothing, no speaking, nothing. Right? They were completely cut off by society. So because of that, they actually eventually they moved, right, to like a valley that belonged to Abu Talib. It's a barren valley. Right? They eventually were driven there. Right? And they lived there for about 3.5 years. Right? Surviving on leaves, surviving on just whatever they could find on the ground. Right? Because they couldn't buy anything. They were not allowed to have transactions at all. So nobody would have any form of transactions with them. Right? So they were basically reduced to the worst form of poverty. Right? For 3.5 years, the worst form of poverty. These years would see Sayyidina Khadija grow thinner and thinner and weaker and weaker. Right? It will also see Abu Talib grow very skinny and very weak. Right? Or the entire family, both tribes of Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, right, they would suffer greatly under this boycott. Right? And this boycott, it was something that was never done. It has been never done before. Right? Against of a people against their own people, never. Right? So it was something that was just so drastic. Right, that Abu Jahl took as a step. Right, in fact, when he wrote those words, right, and he hung them in the Kaaba, right, there were disbelievers amongst the people of Mecca who were not agreeable. Right, they know, for them, we're not Muslim, but we don't hate them. We don't hate the Muslims. We're not Muslim, we don't hate the Muslims. So there were disbelievers, amongst the people of Mecca who were, they were fair-minded Muslims. They were fair-minded disbelievers. So they could see that Abu Jahl he's too much. It's too much already. It's too much. It's too evil. Right? And here also we see from the life of Sayyidina Khadija al-Kubra, right, that she was someone throughout her life, since she was young, she would always help the poor. Always be in service of the poor. Right? And now this will come back to her. Right? So she was the one, because she is not Bani Hashim. She's not. Right, she is not of the tribe of Hashim, but she is together with Rasulullah in this, with her undying support for her husband. So by right, she is not of this boycott. And there were Muslims who were not of the boycott. Right, like Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, they are not of the boycott. So it was not a boycott against the Muslims, it wasn't. Right, it was a boycott against the family, right, the tribe of Rasulullah SAW, Bani Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib. Right, for them to surrender Rasulullah to the disbelievers, for the disbelievers to kill Rasulullah. So you can see, it's a one strong voice, Abu Jahl, who's basically calling the shots. Like, he's the one who's making everybody do all these things, and nobody actually didn't really want to do it, but Abu Jahl is forcing it. Right, he's actually forcing it. So during these 3.5 years, you would see, right, of the different Sahaba, right, they would send, and Sayyidina Khadija, because of her goodness to the people for so many years. Right, at this point, she's in her, in her 60s. Right, but she has an entire rapport of always helping people throughout her youth. Right, even up to her old age, she would be somebody who was giving a lot of sadaqah. So the people in her family, her nephews, her cousins, right, who always received financial help from her, now they felt obliged, and they were disbelievers. Right, they felt obliged, right, because they saw their auntie, right, Sayyidina Khadija, growing old, growing frail, right, growing very thin and weak in these 3.5 years. right? So there were people, right, who were amongst these believers who would send camel loads of food, right, to the people of Bani Hashim and Bani Al-Muttalib, right? They would, right? So, and then there were also those believers, right? Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar. There were those who also sent secretly camel loads of food, right? And this like food that would come every now and then, right, that would help sustain the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? But they would say that they would hear in the night, like cries from the valley, like from the valley of Abu Talib, right? Babies crying, children crying, all out of hunger, right? Intense starvation that they were going through, right? So and this got to the hearts of the fair-minded disbelievers who were not there, right? Who were not in agreement to what Abu Jahl has done. Right, it got to their hearts, like, because you're hearing people crying every day, every night, and it's your own family. Right, so they want to fight against Abu Jahl. Right, so now these believers are not united. Right, and in fact, they were never united about this boycott. They were not. But Abu Jahl forced it. He forced it. For 3.5 years is not short time. It's a very long time to undergo a boycott. And for them to last the entire 3.5 years, right, that is, it's amazing like how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed them to last, right? Knowing that you cannot buy food and sell food, what's your livelihood? Nobody buys and sells from you, and Mecca was a trading city, right? Was a trading hub, right? So where are they going to get their income from? Where are they going to get sustenance from? Mecca is not a place of agriculture. It was not, right? So you can't even like grow your own crops, right? So if you were to be boycotted in Mecca, you basically have nothing. And there was nothing to sustain except the few people who were once in a while sending food to the entire tribe. We're talking about a tribe. Right? So it's not even like just a few members of the family. It's a full tribe of Bani Hashim and Abdul and Bani Muttalib. And here you also see that the tribe of Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, they stuck with Rasulullah the entire time, even though they were not Muslim. Right? There were those who were Muslim, and then there were many who were not Muslim. But they stuck. I mean, they suffered the boycott. They suffered the boycott for family, right? For the name of tribe, right? That we will not give in our men, right, to be killed, and that shows the strong solidarity that the Arabs they had, right? When it comes to tribe, they never abandon their tribe, ever, right? So, so we know from this story, like from the boycott, and how strong. Because if you think about it, like, will you do it? Right? Will you do it? If your whole family is being tortured because of one person in the family, right? The whole family right? The whole family gets tortured. Would you actually stand by that one member? Right? Or would you just like you go? You want to call them to Islam? You go and suffer yourself. I mean, very few people will actually stand up to that. Right? And this is even more people who don't even believe in the message, right? Standing up to their men, Rasulullah, I mean, Muhammad, who was in their tribe. I mean, it's amazing lah. It's amazing, right? And some people say that Islam was sent down to the Arabs, right? Because the Arabs at the time of Rasulullah, in his time, they were people who were known for integrity, for honesty, right? For people who held on to their promises and to their vows. Right? So they were not like people who were just anyhow. Right? They had honor and pride. Right? So even though they were idol worshippers, the Arabs at that time, they were people of pride and honor. Right? So if they were to promise or to pledge, they would, till death, they would not let go of the pledge or the promise. Right? So they were known for that. Right? So when they took Islam, right, they were strong, right, on their holding on to Islam. So what happened? Like, how was this boycott nullified? Right. So what happened was that right, there was Sumur. Right, so there was a 3 years passed, about 2 or 3 years passed, right? And the people of Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, they were still boycotted. They were at their valley, right? They were there, right? Then, right, someone by the name of Hashim bin Amr, right? And he was said that he was somebody who was somebody who was linked to the Bani Hashim, not of the Bani Hashim, but linked. And he was of the few who would send food, right? Who actually send food secretly to the Bani Hashim. He strongly felt against this boycott. He strongly hated it, very much strongly. So he gathered some people, right? So first and foremost, he went to his friend Zuhair. He gathered Zuhair, right? And he said, oh Zuhair, right, are you pleased that you are able to eat, right? You are able to drink what you want to drink, right? And your own mother side, and because they had mother sides who were from the Bani Hashim. So basically there's an intermarriage lah. There's intermarriage going on, right? So maybe their own aunties, right, are of the Bani Hashim. So their own aunties are suffering, right? So they are not suffering because they're not Bani Hashim, they're from a different family, and so on, right? So he will say, how can you eat what you eat and drink what you drink, knowing that your mother's side, they are suffering in the valley of Abu Talib, right? Do you actually feel good doing that, right? And he said, no, I don't feel good, but what can I do? I'm only one man, right? And then this Hashim bin Amr, right? He said that, I have an idea, but we need one more person, 3 of us. So they began secretly discussing this. So they went to find someone else, right? So they went to Al-Mut'im bin Adi, right? So they went to him, right? And he also had connections to Bani Hashim. So these are people, basically, they're not of Bani Hashim, but they're connected, right? And they were not necessarily believers, right? So he found another man, and he began to speak to him and say, you know what? Do you actually feel comfortable that you have food and you have your drink, and you have this, and you have your own relatives on your mother's side who are being tortured, right? Who can't have food nor drink, and you hear their cries in the night? Do you feel good? Can you sleep, right, in the night knowing this? And he said, no, I don't feel good about it, but what can we do? We're only one man, right? So basically people were against this, but they were all like individuals, right? And they were all too afraid to stand up to Abu Jahl, right? So this one guy, he was plotting something, right? So he went to each of them, right? And they began to, what we say pakat. Right? They'll come to an agreement on what they would do. So they say, the next time we go up to the Kaaba, right, and Abu Jahl is there, we disperse ourselves. We don't stand in one group. We disperse. I will begin to speak against Abu Jahl. And while I'm speaking, Abu Jahl will definitely counter me. Then someone on the other side of the crowd, you say you agree with what I'm saying. Then someone from the other side of the crowd, you say you agree with what I'm saying. And if we do this, there will be people from within the crowd who will start to stand up. It's an idea. And it's a very good idea. Right? Because if you come together and as one group, right, Abu Jahl can just reject that one group in one blow. Right? So we don't hear what you say. Right? But if you're dispersed, right, so it seems as if the whole crowd is against Abu Jahl. Right? It's an image, that you can put forth. Right? So it's a good idea. It's a good idea he had. And in fact, it actually worked. Right? So they went to the Kaaba, right, and Abu Jahl was there, right, and it's after 3 years, after 3.5 years of the boycott, right, and they begin to say, so Abu Jahl is talking, and they begin to say that, so one person stands up, and he says, then you know what, I think it's not right. I don't think it's right that we do this to our own family. They are Bani Hashim, Bani Muttalib. They are of our noblemen, right, of the noble tribes of Mecca. Right? I don't agree that we should do this to our own family. Right? No, even if they are Muslims, or even if they want to protect Muhammad, right? They are family. Right? We are all tribes. We don't do this to our own people. And Abu Jahl turns to you, and Abu Jahl says, "Oh, shut up! Right? You don't know what you're talking about." And then somebody else begins to speak on the other side and say, "No! I agree with what he's saying. Right? He has a point. Right? We are all Quraysh. Right? We're all from Qusay. We're all from the same lineage. We don't do this to our own people. Right? This is not right. This is not right. We don't do such things." Right? And Abu Jahl turns around and he says, No. We are holding on to this boycott. It's working. Right? They're going to give up Muhammad anytime soon. And then another one stands up. And another one says, No. We never agreed to this boycott. It was never, you were the one, right? You were the one who wrote this down. And you can't say that we're all. So basically, when they began to doing this, more and more people began to voice out. Right? People began to feel more confident and more brave to voice out against this Abu Jahl. Right? And eventually, Abu Jahl, he felt overwhelmed by the people. Right? Exactly at the same time, with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala's, power and wisdom. Right? Allah revealed to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who was at the valley of Abu Talib, right, that the termites of the earth, right, the termites of the earth had eaten up the paper that Abu Jahl had written, except for Bismika Allahumma. Right. So Rasulullah SAW immediately he told his uncle Abu Talib. He said, "Oh my uncle, Allah has revealed to me that the worms of the earth, right, or the termites of the earth, has eaten up the paper except for Bismika Allahumma. Go to Abu Jahl and tell him, right, that Muhammad says the paper has been eaten up, and if you find that what he says is true, right, then you stop the boycott. Right? But if you find that what he says is not true, then we will surrender him to you for you to do as you wish with him." Right? So Abu Talib came into the Kaaba, and this is the time where the chaos is going on. Right? They're having chaos of they're pointing out, and they're rebelling against Abu Jahl, and Abu Jahl at this point he's like, big headache, right? What's going on? Right? And then but he's still being stubborn about it. Right? So at that exact moment, right, Abu Talib comes. Right? So it's all divine plan. And Allah has planned it. Right? So Allah has planned it so beautifully. Abu Talib comes. Abu Talib says to Abu Jahl, right, that so he says that this is what Muhammad said, right? Do you agree? And Abu Jahl at this point he's like, okay, right, let's just see the paper, right? So I'm sure like these worms can't read, right? They won't know where to stop. Right? I mean, they would eat the whole paper, right? They won't like stop at Bismika Allahumma, right? They're worms, right? So so Abu Jahl, his arrogance. They know he's the prophet, so you're thinking, why did he agree to this? But basically his arrogance, not to admit, right, that what he's saying is true, right? So his arrogance is, okay, fine, let's check the paper. So when they went to the Kaaba, and true enough, they found the paper eaten up all the way, except for the words Bismika Allahumma. Right, it was eaten up all the way, except for those words. Right? And as Arabs, once you agree, you cannot turn back. Right? And then the people who are rising up against Abu Jahl, they all saw. So they all say, see, the paper has been eaten. Right? The boycott is to be lifted. There's no more boycott after today. Right? So then the word spread, right? And immediately the boycott was lifted, because the people in Mecca, they were not for it. They were completely not for it. Right? But they felt forced by Abu Jahl, like the monster of Abu Jahl. They felt forced by his terrible decision, right? So but during the boycott, Sayyidina Ibn Abbas was born. Right? Sayyidina Ibn Abbas is known as the inkwell of this ummah. Right? He was born during the boycott. So and it was that they were so poor, they had no dates to tahniq for him. So Rasulullah SAW, he would use his own saliva to tahniq Sayyidina Ibn Abbas, and he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, teach him the interpretations of your book. Right? So that's why he and that was in the 10th to 13th year of prophethood. Right? So Sayyidina Ibn Abbas, right, he would be a young boy when Rasulullah passed away. He'd be a young boy, right? Because in Medina 10 years, so a few years of the boycott, maybe he was about 12, right, 13 years old at most when Rasulullah passed away. Right, but he attained the knowledge, right, whereby all scholars today, right, especially for tafsir, even for other parts of Islamic knowledge, they will refer to Sayyidina Ibn Abbas. Right? He would be the reference point, right, of all of these knowledges. Imagine a 13-year-old young boy, 13 years old, Sec 1, right? Our Sec 1s where are they? Right? I mean, subhanallah, secondary 1 young boy, right? And he has amassed the kind of knowledge that he would spend his entire life teaching people. Right, and he would, subhanallah. Right, so but that would see the boycott would end with Abu Talib, right, in his weakest. Right, he was very deeply weakened by this boycott. right? And Sayyidah Khadija, she herself was very weakened by this boycott, right? So it would not be much long after the boycott. And then Abu Talib, he will pass away. Within 3 days, Sayyidah Khadija passes away, right? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would lose the two most pinnacle people, right? The strongest support to him in his life within a week, right? Within 1 week, right? It would happen. And so don't think that it was apart, no. Right? In fact, Sayyidah Khadija, we'll go into the story in detail, right? In fact, Sayyidah Khadija, because she saw of how concerned Rasulullah was about his uncle, and he kept going to his uncle's house and doing da'wah and everything, because it was the narration that he kept doing it, right, to Abu Talib, right? So the scholars say that we don't comment, right, as to exactly what happened to Abu Talib. That she kept her illness to herself. She did not inform Rasulullah that she felt ill, right? So she kept it to herself so as not to burden him, because he was so concerned, right, about his uncle, right? So when his uncle eventually passed away, right, then he realized that his own wife was actually not well, right, because she was keeping it to herself lah, right? So, and she will also pass away, right? Inshallah, next week we will go into the story, right, in more detail, right? And then from then on, after the death of Abu Talib, right, dynamics would change drastically, because when Abu Talib passed away, Abu Lahab came in charge of the family. And of course, if Abu Lahab now in charge of Bani Hashim, he surrendered Rasulullah immediately. He wouldn't even care. Kill him lah. You know, so now at this point, Rasulullah's life is at stake. It's at stake. Because Abu Talib is no longer around. Alright, any questions? Pause there. Today's a short class, 1 hour class. Because you know sometimes when someone is his voice is very strong, right? Somebody is very assertive. So sometimes, like especially like in a class, like if you imagine yourself in a class, if there's one classmate who's very loud and very assertive, maybe there might be of the classmates, and quite a number of them, who are not agreeable to what he's trying to push forth. But because you're all like more soft-spoken, and you don't like to find trouble with people or argue with this one loudmouth in your class, right? You basically you just give in sometimes, and if you can even in that kind of situation, but you just don't want to get into a fight, right? So it could be that reason, right? Or maybe they didn't realize at the beginning of the boycott that it was going to be 3 years. Maybe they didn't realize it was going to be that intense. Allahu Alam. Right, but it could be that they were it could be intimidated by Abu Jahl at first, or maybe everybody thinks that everybody is together Abu Jahl on it, right? And then they realize that actually nobody is on him with him on it, right? So because of Abu Jahl's assertiveness lah, right? Assertive behavior, and it's also a lesson that for us to learn lah. Assertive behavior can cause a society to go one direction, even though the more sensible members of society are in disagreement. But because they're more sensible and they're quieter, they don't stand up. They don't actually stand up.
So what happens if, let's say, somebody goes against it? Like, they have this agreement, they write, and then they put it up. So what if somebody goes against it openly?
I mean, it's not saying anything, because there's no policing in Mecca at the time, right? So of course, you had the people who were secretly giving the food, right? There were those, and Abu Jahl kind of knew people were doing it secretly. He tried to stop them, but in a sense, what can you do? Because there's no policemen, right, in Mecca. There's no like soldiers. There's no nothing. So I mean, at most you just scold you, ridicule you, try to insult you, at most. Right? But they can't really do anything, right? But it was an interesting dynamics that was going on at the time. Right? It could be that people were just quiet about it, even though they were not agreeable. It could be. Allahu Alam. There was a boycott lah. But it was the 3 most difficult years of Rasulullah's life, right? Which ended with the most difficult year, which was the year of grief, right? Whereby he lost his a beloved wife, right, of at this point 25 years. Right, he was in his 50s at this point. Right, he married at 25. So a beloved wife of 25 years, left behind with his children. Right, of course, of his children, two are married off. Right, but his Sayyidina Fatima with him still. Sayyidina Kulthum is still with him, right, in the house, right, without a mother. Right, so you need to understand that these young girls also lost their Sayyidina Fatima Zahra at that point when Sayyidina Khadijah passed away. She was a teenager, right, a teenager, losing her mother as a teenager and her father being persecuted, right, and now people are trying to kill her father. Right, so from the point of view of Sayyidina Fatima Zahra and Sayyidina Kulthum, it's not it was a very bleak situation that was happening. Mother passed away, and their mother passed away. Their sister Sayyidina Ruqayyah, right, was overseas. Right, she was at Habasha, so she did not hear the news of her mother passing away until later on. Right, because I mean it's overseas. So when she came back, right, then she heard the news that her mother had passed away. Right, when you put it in perspective. Right, put it in perspective. So these were families. It's not that Sayyidina Khadijah passed away in the khalas, that was it. No. She had children. Right, she had young children under her, teenage girls. Right, she, of course, Rasulullah did not want to marry after her at first. He did not want to hear it at first, initially. Right, but the Sahaba, they kept, persisting, and they were like telling him, it would do you good, and it's healthy and whatsoever. They would say, it would cheer you up. But basically not a replacement to Sayyidina Khadijah, and never will there be a replacement, right? But it was just, sometimes you just need someone to look after your household, sometimes you need someone to just care for your kids, that kind of thing, right? So from that point of view, and sometimes, and even today we see men, that after their beloved wife passes away, right, they do marry again sometimes, right? But it's not so much that they actually want a replacement, right? But it's just more of like just to manage the house, manage the kids, just to basically help him, with his affairs, But I mean, many a time you will find that she might, right? But many a time you will find that the first wife is always the beloved one, right? And Sayyidina Aisha, even till the end of Rasulullah's life, she would say that he would never forget her. Right? He would never forget Sayyidina Khadijah, and she would say that I felt jealousy for a woman that I never met. I was too small when she passed away. Sayyidina Aisha was too young at that point. She was like, a child when Sayyidina Khadijah passed away. Right? So they were very far in age. Right? But she said, I never felt the kind of jealousy that I felt with any of Rasul's wives except with Khadijah. Because she held a place in his heart that she never left. She just never left his heart. So till the end of his life, he would never forget her. Right? And he would make it clear to Sayyidina Aisha why he would never forget her, because she was the wife who stuck with him through the most difficult years. Because we know at this year of grief, right, is the lowest point in the Sirah. The lowest point in the Sirah was year of grief. And in fact, Rasulullah, he was asked later on when they had like a battle where they lost, and he was asked, "Have you ever felt a day worse than this battle?" And he said, "Yes, Ta'if." Right, Ta'if was worse. Right, and so it was one after another, thing going on. So there's the boycott. Abu Talib passes away. Sayyidina Khadijah passes away. He goes to Ta'if seeking, because Mecca was a gone case. Right, basically Mecca at that point, no more new Muslims, nothing, zero. Right, it was basically stagnant, and they were becoming more and more hostile. They were in fact plotting his assassination. Right, he went to Ta'if to seek help, right, to seek followers, right, and to seek support. Right, he was rejected at Ta'if. Right, pelted with stones. Right, so subhanAllah, the lowest point of his life. And then you have a dua of Ta'if, inshallah, next not week, but week after, we'll go into the dua of Ta'if. Right, the most powerful dua Rasulullah made after Ta'if. Right, and from there was the turning point. Right, the turning point happened at that point. Isra wal Mi'raj happens thereafter. Right, Allah brings him up. Right, and then he meets the Ansar. Right, and they offer, come to our place. Right, so basically, and so it's like downward, hit rock bottom, right, and then upward, right. So all of his wives saw the upward part. The only wife that saw the very difficult years, Sayyidina Khadijah. There was nobody else who saw it. Right, so she was the one who stuck by him the entire time. It's like, I mean, the wife that sticks by, right, difficulty, right, with her husband, and she sacrifices and she bears with it, right? She gains a love, right? Because he will remember her as, you were by me and you didn't leave me and you didn't, because she was rich. She didn't have to have any of this, right? She didn't have to be part of the boycott. She's not Bani Hashim, right? But she's stuck. She's stuck. How many women will actually, like, you stick the entire time, right, and then suffer, and by that, she passed away. Inshallah, we'll go into that in a few weeks, inshallah. I'm trying to finish this before Ramadan, inshallah. Right, inshallah can, because try not to stretch it too long. Right. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. Allahumma anfa'na ma 'allamtana wa zidna ma yanfa'una wa zidna ilman ya rabbal alamin. الفاتحة أنا ونرزقنا العلم النافع ومن الخالص المقبول وحسن التعليم من دلالة الهدى ويسر بذلك قبل النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم وإلى معلمينا ومشايخنا وإلى أهل النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.